The morning of October 5, 2006, began like so many others in Jefferson City, Missouri. The small capital city, crisscrossed by quiet residential streets and lined with weather-worn houses, carried the rhythm of autumn. Trees along the sidewalks were shedding the last of their leaves, and the chill in the air reminded people that winter was not far away. To neighbors, it was just another Thursday. To Kayla Reed, it was supposed to be another ordinary school day. 15 years old, Kayla was in many ways the typical teenager. She was shy but kind, a young girl who enjoyed writing in her notebooks, chatting with friends, and keeping to her routines. Those routines were consistent. Wake up early, get dressed, grab her bag, and walk the short distance to the bus stop. It was a ritual her family had watched countless times before. Nothing about that morning suggested danger. At around 7 a.m., Kayla left her house. A witness later recalled seeing her walking with her school bag slung across her shoulder, heading toward the bus stop just a few blocks away. The neighborhood was stirring awake, cars warming in driveways, porch lights flicking off as people left for work, the faint sounds of dogs barking in backyards. It was the last confirmed sighting of her alive. The expectation was simple. Kayla would board the yellow school bus, spend her day in classes, and return home later in the afternoon. But when the bus rolled up to its stop, Kayla wasn't there. Her absence didn't raise alarms at first. Teenagers sometimes linger, miss buses, or decide to walk with friends. Teachers marked her absent in class, assuming she was sick or running late. It wasn't until later in the day that the truth began to emerge. Kayla never made it to school at all. By the time the afternoon came and Kayla hadn't returned home, unease spread through her household. Calls to friends turned up nothing. Nobody had seen her that morning after she left for the bus stop. Her parents began contacting school administrators, who confirmed she had not been in attendance at all. What started as confusion sharpened into panic. Within hours, her family reached out to the police. Law enforcement's first steps were methodical. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on doors and retracing Kayla's path to the bus stop. They questioned neighbors, asking if anyone had noticed unusual cars parked nearby, or if strangers had been spotted in the area. Some remembered seeing Kayla walking. Others, when pressed, admitted they hadn't noticed anything at all. The minutes of that morning blurred into the ordinary background of daily life. An empty street, a girl walking, and then nothing. The location itself troubled investigators. The distance between Kayla's house and the bus stop was short, a matter of blocks. Yet, in that small window of time and space, she had simply disappeared. For detectives, the lack of a scene was the most disturbing element. There were no screams reported, no signs of a struggle, no items left behind. Kayla seemed to have been erased in the span of minutes. As daylight gave way to evening, the search widened. Patrol cars swept nearby roads, scanning ditches and parking lots. Volunteers joined with flashlights, combing through wooded patches and creek beds. Kayla's photo was circulated quickly, first to local media outlets and then across the community. It showed a young girl with long hair and a gentle expression, suddenly frozen in the context of a crisis no one expected. But the first night yielded nothing. No trace of her clothing, no discarded bag, no clues to where she had gone. For investigators, this silence was ominous. In most runaway cases, there are signs, arguments at home, plans made with friends, a journal entry hinting at escape. For Kayla, there was nothing. As the hours stretched into a full day, Jefferson City began to realize that this was not a misunderstanding or a case of teenage rebellion. A child had vanished in the heart of a residential neighborhood without leaving a single thread behind. In those early moments, there was still hope. Families clung to the idea that maybe she had gone to a friend's house, maybe she had turned down another street, maybe she would come home on her own. But beneath that hope was a growing fear, one that parents in the community could not shake. If Kayla could vanish on her way to school, then no child was truly safe. The first 24 hours are the most critical in any missing person investigation. Detectives knew that every hour without a lead dimmed the chance of finding her quickly. Roadblocks were set up, vehicles stopped and questioned. Kayla's face appeared on urgent bulletins and local news tickers. Her family gave tearful interviews, begging for her safe return. Yet despite the urgency, there was still no solid lead, no direction to chase. By the end of that first day, Jefferson City found itself facing an unnerving reality. A teenager had walked into the cool October morning and never came back. You're watching Trace of Evil, where we reveal true crimes, unsolved disappearances, and mysteries surrounding crime. Like and subscribe to watch more episodes from our channel. Let's get back into the story of Kayla Reed. By the second day of Kayla Reed's disappearance, Jefferson City was on edge. The hope that she might walk back through the front door or call from a friend's house had faded. What replaced it was a frantic search that consumed the community and drew statewide attention. Police operations escalated quickly. Detectives set up a command post near Kayla's neighborhood, filling the area with marked cruisers, unmarked sedans, and officers on foot. Search dogs were deployed to track her scent from her home toward the bus stop, but the trail evaporated before it led anywhere definitive. It was as if she had stepped off the sidewalk and vanished into thin air. Word of Kayla's disappearance spread through local media. Television anchors interrupted evening programming with breaking updates. Her school photo now plastered across every screen. "Missing teen in Jefferson City" became the headline no parent wanted to read. Flyers were printed in bulk and handed out by volunteers who stapled them to utility poles, taped them to gas station doors, and slid them under windshield wipers. Within hours, Kayla's face was impossible to avoid. The community response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people gathered to join in the search, combing through wooded lots, abandoned buildings, and roadside ditches. Local churches opened their halls to coordinate efforts, offering food, flashlights, and maps. Strangers who had never met the Reed family showed up, driven by empathy and the quiet fear that what happened to Kayla could happen to their own child. Investigators pursued every possible lead. They checked with hospitals in case she had been admitted anonymously. They combed through bus records, questioning drivers and fellow students. They examined her computer and phone history, looking for evidence of online conversations or secret plans. But the digital trail offered no revelations. Kayla's life appeared ordinary. No strange contacts, no hidden appointments, no warning signs. Rumors began to swirl. Some speculated she might have run away, but her family dismissed the idea outright. Kayla had no history of rebellion, no disputes at home, no preparations for leaving. She hadn't packed clothes, taken money, or made arrangements with friends. Everything in her bedroom was untouched, waiting for her return. Others wondered if she had been targeted by someone she knew. Detectives questioned classmates, teachers, and neighbors, searching for any hint of inappropriate relationships or predatory behavior. The questioning was exhaustive, but again, nothing concrete emerged. The theories only deepened the mystery. Within days, the search radius expanded. State patrol helicopters hovered overhead, scanning fields with thermal imaging cameras. Dive teams entered creeks and ponds, probing murky waters for any trace. Cadaver dogs were brought in, though their alerts proved inconclusive. Despite the scale of the operation, the result remained the same: no Kayla, no evidence, no closure. The lack of progress frustrated the public. Press conferences became tense, with reporters pressing law enforcement on whether they were dealing with a runaway or an abduction. Officials maintained their careful balance of optimism and caution, but the reality was grim. Every day without progress reduced the likelihood of a safe recovery. For Kayla's family, those days blurred into a nightmare. Her mother and father stood before cameras, voices breaking as they begged for her safe return. They held up her photo, urging anyone with information to come forward. Their appeals were sincere and heartbreaking, yet they produced no breakthrough. As the investigation dragged on, darker possibilities emerged. Could Kayla have been taken by a stranger? Abduction by an unknown assailant is rare but devastating, and the circumstances of her disappearance fit the unsettling profile. A short walk in a residential neighborhood offered an opportunity. A car pulling up, a door opening, a moment of force. It would take less than a minute. Detectives began looking outward, pulling records of known sex offenders in the area. They knocked on doors, conducted interviews, and searched homes. Several individuals were questioned extensively, but none provided a link strong enough to make them suspects. The lack of physical evidence, no fibers, no fingerprints, no surveillance footage, left investigators chasing shadows. Despite the silence, the case never slipped from the public eye. Vigils were organized, candles lit in front of her school, prayers said in crowded church pews. Friends described Kayla as kind-hearted, soft-spoken, and undeserving of whatever fate had befallen her. Their words echoed the sentiment of a town caught between grief and determination. Then came the theories. Online forums buzzed with speculation. Some pointed to human trafficking, suggesting Kayla may have been lured or forced into a network that preyed on vulnerable teens. Others insisted she had to know her abductor, that someone she trusted used that trust to get her off the street without a struggle. Each theory added layers to the mystery, but none solved it. For every possibility raised, investigators needed proof, and proof never came. The case was becoming a void, full of movement, full of speculation, but empty of results. By the second week, the urgency was palpable. The FBI became involved, offering additional resources and expertise. They assisted with psychological profiling, data analysis, and advanced search techniques. Their presence underscored the seriousness of the case, but even federal support could not manufacture evidence where none existed. The people of Jefferson City began to live with the uneasy knowledge that a child had vanished from their streets, and despite the best efforts of hundreds, her whereabouts remained unknown. Parents walked their children to bus stops instead of letting them go alone. Porch lights stayed on late into the night. Safety, once assumed, was now a fragile illusion. As weeks turned into months, the active search slowed. The flyers yellowed on bulletin boards, the news coverage waned, and volunteers returned to their daily lives. But for Kayla's family, time did not move forward. Their lives were frozen on the morning of October 5th, waiting for answers that never seemed to arrive. Months passed, and with them the sharp urgency of Kayla Reed's case dulled into an enduring ache. The immediate flurry of search parties and televised appeals gave way to a quieter, more suffocating phase of uncertainty. The Reed family clung to hope, but the absence of answers began to feel like its own kind of torment. Detectives continued their work, though the leads grew increasingly thin. Every potential sighting reported by the public was investigated. Calls came in from across Missouri and neighboring states. A girl matching Kayla's description spotted at a shopping mall, walking along a highway, or in the company of an older man. Each claim was checked, but none produced results. False leads accumulated like dust, clouding the already fragile investigation. The lack of solid evidence forced police to rely on forensic re-examination. Items from Kayla's bedroom were tested for overlooked clues: fingerprints, DNA, fibers. Investigators hoped for a trace of an outsider's presence. Nothing unusual was found. Even her phone and computer, once combed for contacts, were checked again with updated software. No new information surfaced. Her disappearance began to shift from an active investigation to a haunting mystery. Detectives acknowledged the possibility she had been abducted, but without witnesses, video footage, or forensic evidence, the case was slipping further from solvability. It was as though Kayla had vanished into a void that resisted every attempt to illuminate it. For the Reed family, this silence was unbearable. They refused to let her name fade into obscurity. They organized vigils every few months, each one smaller than the last but still fiercely attended by the most committed supporters. Candles flickered against the night sky as prayers were said aloud, a community ritual that both comforted and wounded them. The internet, too, became a parallel arena for the case. Online communities dissected every detail that had been made public. Amateur investigators pored over maps of Jefferson City, debating possible routes Kayla could have taken. Some suggested she had willingly entered a vehicle. Others speculated about hidden dangers in places overlooked during the searches. But all of it remained speculation, countless theories without tangible anchors. Law enforcement, while publicly optimistic, privately faced mounting frustration. Resources were stretched thin, and Kayla's case competed with new emergencies. Over time, the number of officers dedicated exclusively to her disappearance dwindled. The FBI remained involved but could not justify the same intensity of focus indefinitely. In the absence of official progress, rumors filled the void. Some circulated dark claims that Kayla had been trafficked out of state, a victim of a crime so organized and hidden that it would be almost impossible to trace. Others whispered that perhaps she had left voluntarily with someone she trusted, someone who convinced her to abandon her life without warning. Both scenarios carried devastating implications, and neither could be proven. The family endured the cruel cycle of false hope. Every phone call from authorities or the media threatened to reignite their optimism, only to extinguish it again with the words, "It wasn't her." These constant disappointments chipped away at their strength, yet they persisted in keeping her memory alive. Her parents appeared at schools, community centers, and even state rallies, speaking about the importance of child safety, urging vigilance so that no other family would suffer as they had. Years passed and milestones came and went. Birthdays, Christmases, and graduations accumulated like shadows, each one a painful reminder of what Kayla was missing and what her family had lost. Photographs of her at 14 were the only images the public ever saw, frozen in time as if she were trapped in that year forever. The question that haunted everyone was the same. If she were alive, what would she look like now? Authorities periodically released age-progressed images created by forensic artists. These digital reconstructions imagined Kayla's face maturing, longer hair, sharper features, the subtle changes that time would have etched into her appearance. Each release drew renewed attention from the press and community, but once again, no leads emerged. The images were haunting in their own right, serving as reminders of the years lost, of the life she should have lived but didn't. By the 5th year, the case had become one of Jefferson City's most enduring mysteries. Documentaries and podcasts revisited the story, drawing new audiences into the labyrinth of unanswered questions. Journalists interviewed her family, former detectives, and community members, each trying to breathe new life into a story that had grown cold. While these productions kept her memory alive, they also underscored the bleakness of the situation. So much had been said, yet so little was known. For the Reed family, resilience was the only option. They established a small foundation in Kayla's name, dedicated to supporting families of missing children. Through this effort, they transformed their grief into advocacy, ensuring that their daughter's disappearance carried meaning beyond tragedy. Their work helped other families, but it did not fill the void left by Kayla's absence. The years of silence hardened into a kind of permanent wound. The lack of evidence meant that speculation never ended. Some locals clung to hope that she was alive somewhere, living under a different identity, perhaps unaware that people were still searching for her. Others accepted the darker possibility that she had met a tragic fate long ago, and that her body might never be found. As the case moved deeper into the realm of cold cases, investigators admitted privately that solving it would require a stroke of luck, a confession, a new witness, or the discovery of evidence buried for years. Without such a break, Kayla Reed's story would remain frozen, unresolved, suspended between hope and despair. A decade after Kayla Reed's disappearance, her case stood as both a deeply personal loss and a symbol of how fragile answers can be when a person vanishes without a trace. For Jefferson City, the memory of the girl who left home one summer day and never returned lingered like a wound that never fully healed. Her parents had grown older in the shadow of uncertainty. The lines etched into their faces told the story of sleepless nights, unanswered questions, and the kind of pain that never softened with time. They had lived through 10 years of imagining every possibility. That their daughter might be alive somewhere, struggling to return home, or that she had fallen victim to violence in those first hours of vanishing. Neither answer brought peace. Hope and grief were locked in perpetual battle. Law enforcement, though less visible, continued to revisit the case whenever possible. Detectives rotated through departments, but Kayla's file remained on their desks. Technological advances in forensic analysis provided occasional opportunities to re-examine evidence. DNA databases had expanded, facial recognition software had improved, and missing persons networks grew more interconnected. Each time, Investigators hoped the upgrades would yield a breakthrough. Yet each time, the silence persisted. The case also influenced changes in procedure. Local police acknowledged that early hours in missing children cases were critical and that resources needed to be deployed with greater urgency. Kayla's disappearance became part of law enforcement training in Missouri, her story serving as an example of how fragile an investigation could be if the trail went cold too quickly.